the same blessings if I believe, if I don't. The sun shines on the bad just like the rain fall on the good. Good things happen to bad people like bad things happen to good people. God ain't got nothing to do with that.
You think this is the right example on the way to live your life, because you're saying you want to do net positive?
Man, listen, you live your life.
No, I'm not saying, those are two different things.
Let me say, yes, I think it's the right message.
Tell me why.
Because can't nobody dictate to you about your life. God gave it to you.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. You're right. You can do whatever you want to do.
I don't think God is real. I think God is questionable.
Then that's a different conversation. You just told me you said God is real. Then
I said I believe in God.
Right.
Based off what my mother said.
But you don't believe God is real.
I read Revelation.
Yeah.
And I read Genesis. Now I don't believe God is real. Because I just told you about children being sex trafficked. Where's God for them?
By who though? By who?
By whoever.
Until now, game changer. They have a wire trimming head that's universal. It's going to fit any weed eater. They have different size leads on it. They have a 3 and a 6. I went with the 6 because I'm never changing weed eater string again. These are absolutely awesome. I don't know what took them so long to come up with.
Because I just told you about children being sex trafficked. Where's God
by
for
who
them?
Though? By who?
By whoever. I don't know.
By the people.
By what people?
By the people.
The government, whoever. So if God is real, why he don't stop those people? If God is real,
he gave free will to
okay. So that's why I don't think God is real. Because if God is real, why hadn't white people suffered for what they did to slavery? If God is really real.
So then for you, you're conflicted.
No, I'm not conflicted. I don't believe people know God to tell me God is really real.
No, I must. So no. Originally you said you believe.
I believe in God. That don't mean I think he's real. I believe in the boogeyman. I don't think he's real. I believe in ghosts, the spirit. I don't know they're real.
Do you have faith?
No, I got faith in me.
You got faith in you.
Because everything I heard about faith, I think is bullshit.
So let me tell you, who is the biggest man in your life that let you down? No man's ever let you down.
I've never been connected to a man.
Father.
Never been connected to him to be let down.
Did you ever meet him?
Never.
So that's the biggest letdown.
That's not a letdown.
But you never met him.
I had uncles and granddaddies to replace that letdown. You don't even know it's there.
But there's different than father.
No, listen. Out of sight is really out of mind. There are many kids whose father is gone and another replacement have stepped in and filled the void of a father. No. Man, listen, if you've never seen your daddy, you'll have attachment to it. That's bullshit.
Yeah, but that's a different story.
No, that's a childhood abandonment. That's a childhood abandonment issue that you hold in secretly. That don't affect you as a disappointment. You never expected nothing to be disappointed.
So I'm listening to you. And it's not your fault. I'm not sitting here saying anything that...
Man, I don't give a damn what you saying. I'm telling you, I ain't never been connected to a man to be...
I understand.
Listen, I had a granddaddy. I had an uncle who kept me with him. Yeah. I don't know that's not my daddy. The presence of a man is the father, not the title.
Yeah, but when a man grows up eventually...
I don't
get it. You said something earlier.
Listen, when I grow up, I have no connection to a man. So no man, I ain't been hurt by a man. I had no connection to a man to be hurt. No expectation, no nothing.
You know what you said at the beginning of the podcast? What? You said something very powerful. You said, when you were a kid, you and your older brother, he was a big guy, and he was in and out of juvie, and then your mother ended up having a daughter. I think you said later in life, she ended up having a daughter, and then mom worked for GM, and she worked after you guys got home, so she would prepare your meal. She would tell you to do the homework, and she's gonna call at these times. You guys better be home, or else. And if she came home. And if you guys didn't do what she told you to do, she'd wake your ass up and talk to you.
Now, where the man is?
But exactly, that's what I'm saying. But because there wasn't a man, she couldn't check you to raise boys. I was raised by a single mother. You don't know what the
fuck you talking about. I'm telling you, I got uncles and granddaddy. You think my granddaddy ain't around? Checking my brother them? We had men.
I'm repeating your words.
No. But I never told you it wasn't no man. You're assuming. I got a bunch of uncles and granddaddy.
I understand.
So if you know so I had the presence of a male.
Right.
I ain't the black kid that grew up poor with no dad. I had a plenty of men, well-to-do kid. I had my own room in the third grade.
You know what I love about you, Charleston? Let me tell you what I love about you, and I have so much respect for you. Is when I was a kid, and I was we didn't have a lot of money. We're like what do you call it, Section 8 and welfare kid.
See, I don't know what it's like to be poor.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like to be poor.
I'm telling you from my perspective. Yeah. But from my perspective, when I was raised that way in LA, Glendale. And we would have people that would come over and they would say things like, hey, let us get you this for Christmas. Let us get you this. And pour this, pour that. I hated it. I couldn't stand people looking down at us as if we don't have anything. as if we don't have any money. I hated it. I couldn't stand it. So I went to the Army. And then eventually, I ended up making my own money. I didn't want to be in debt to anybody. I didn't want any favors. I didn't want any of that stuff. Your level of the mentally, how powerful words have been in your life.
Let me just say this.
You sang a hip hop song
Love,
at the beginning.
Listen, I come from love. Love conquers all. So I got a loving mother.
Yeah.
We live in a wonderful, affluent background. When I get hurt, I'm centered around love. I'm growing up in a hospital with loving nurses. I don't know my daddy not here. I got nothing but love. I got my uncle. I'm his favorite nephew. My name is Charleston. My nickname is Blue. My uncle was a pimp. I was born in 1977. There's a movie called Come Back Charleston Blue, 1976. My uncle named me. That's my daddy. So I always tried to be a pimp. Pimp on hold. Prostitute hoe. My daddy absent though.
You validate my point.
So this is what I'm saying. So I had men.
Validate.
I had men. So I don't have no abandonment. I was a kid who grew up in a hospital setting, like a dog who been inside. Finally got to go outside and play as a kid. Nigga, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy. I just never been a kid before. And I'm attracted by what's wrong. So nah, man, I wasn't hurt. That's the excuse most people like to use. That's not my excuse. I chose to do what I did because I thought that was a part of manhood. Yeah. So my uncle would paint pretty pictures of prison to me. So when I got to school at recess, I would tell my friend what I was gonna do when I get to prison, based on what they done told me. So it wasn't disappointment. It was a badge of honor. It's a badge of honor. As most black people killed with cold heart, it seemed like. It's not cold. They want that badge of honor. And I wanted it. One eye, small frame, couldn't play football. I wanted to be a part of something. Yeah, and I found something to be a part of. And it was everything I was looking for. Coming from the negative uncles and my working mother's home. Her presence is gone. We just got a perfect environment, great environment, but we got this negative images to see that matches what we see on television.
Is she still around?
Yeah, mama's still around. Retired from General Motors. Became a foster parent for like 30 years.
Dallas?
Yeah.
Still in Dallas?
Yeah, still in Dallas.
Your older brother?
My brother just come home from prison after doing 31 years for a murder he committed when he was 17. Now, my brother was angry. He had a disappointment in his father. He was, daddy show up, daddy show up. I never had dad to show up to disappointment.
Yeah.
So he was angry. I always angry. So I remember we was about, the General Motors Arlington plant had transferred the people from Texas to Monroe, Louisiana.
Yeah.
I remember watching TV one time. I was probably about 10 years old. And out of nowhere, my brother looked at me and said, when I grow up, I'm going to kill somebody. I ran after her and told my mama, kid. My mother spanked him out of frustration.
How old was he?
He probably was 12.
What was he watching when he said this?
We were watching a Rambo movie.
And he said,
First Blood. He said, he just looked at me out of nowhere and said, with a sincere look, and it scared me as a kid. He said, when I grow up, I'm going to kill somebody.
Okay.
Man, I ran after her, hurry up, and told my mother. Because mothers have to work with very little support back then. Now that's a lot of support. She didn't have the luxury to sit down and try to understand where that root came from.
Right.
So he dealt with a lot of disappointment. He grew up angry. I grew up with love, just wanting to fit in. I didn't want to be the baby. I want to be treated. I was baby. I was coddled, but I was a brave heart. I couldn't wait to break free.
All goes back to the conversations we had when you're talking about how things happen with the African American community, when we talked about crack earlier, when we talked about mindset earlier, father policies, a lot of that. And today, how old are you? Are you?
I'm 48. I just turned 48, May 17th.
So your brother's how old?
He turned 51.
So he just got out 3 years ago?
Yeah, he just got out 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
From 17,
31 years.
Yeah, from 17 to 17.
But you guys are still close.
No. You don't know your brother after 30 years?
That's what I'm saying. That's
I don't want to be close.
What happened when you saw him? Did you see him?
Yeah, I ain't gonna see him in prison.
And when he came out, what was the conversation like?
I don't know you, nigga.
Like that?
Even though I've been seeing you. We've been seeing each other in and out of prison for 30, so we see each other.
Yeah.
But at some point, I stopped going to go see my brother in prison. Because I'm not your mother and I'm not your father. Your mama love you enough, nigga, to keep going to go see you. I'm gonna stay with my kids. My kids ain't down here. Why do I have to subject myself to be treated like that? So I ain't gonna see, I ain't sending no money on these books. Because come out here to us. You got a family out here. So when he got out, he got out on the right track. But he's institutionalized, and he think he know everything. So you have to put your hand back, because you can't correct the fool.
Makes sense. Yeah. Charleston, this has been a blast talking to you.
I love it. You got to have me back again.
I definitely will. You will be invited 100% back again in the future. We got a lot more talking to do. But I got a meeting. I'm 5 minutes late, and they're texting me left and right now. Appreciate you for coming up, brother.
You arched your eyebrows? You ain't arched my eyebrows, did you?
What I said?
Your eyebrows, are they arched?
Are they arched?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
They ain't threaded, are they?
Are they threaded?
They too perfectly done.
I got a true Middle Eastern eyebrow.
Okay. I'm sitting up in the minute. Perfect in the mother.
So, Gavin, were you at the Coldplay concert in Boston last night?
Sadly, I missed that. It's
Who were you with?
Yeah, exactly. I was at home with my wife, but yeah, wow, how insane.
There's just so many layers to that story. It's impossible to get away from. It'll be 72 hours of memes. Dave, were you at the Coldplay concert in Boston last night? And if so, were you with Woody, your astronaut friend? Did you take Woody to the concert?
No, counselor. I was here in Santa Cruz last night.
Oh, you were in Santa Cruz on a business trip? Okay.
The funny thing is, if they had not reacted the way they did, the camera would have just panned away.
Yeah.
Nothing.
No one would have ever known.
There is some great irony to the head of people and human resources being in an affair with the CEO, apparently. Allegedly.
Don't jump to conclusions, Jason.
No, it could have.
He could have been cracking her back, like when you get the back touch.
Yes, it could have been a
chiropractic move.
Oh my God. Rayman Davidson.
We open source it to the fans, and they just go crazy.
All right, let's get to work. It is the slow news weeks of summer, and we are delighted to have fan favorite, super intelligent bestie, Gavin Baker with us from Atreides. How are you, sir? How's your summer shaping up?
Fantastic. It's been awesome.
Stock market is back. That's good for you because you invest in both public and private companies, yeah?
My firm does, yes. Yeah.
Gavin, let me ask you a question. How do you price tariffs today? So where do you think this ends up? Obviously, there's a lot of back and forth, and everyone's trying to make a read on what the end game is. What's your market take as you're making investments right now, and where we end up on the tariff front?
It is a good question. It's open. We're going to see what happens with sectoral tariffs. I think it's hard. You're doing the Winning AI Summit. It's going to be hard to win in AI if we put tariffs on semiconductors. But for a lot of what I do for now, tariffs are not super relevant. But for the market, for the economy, they are relevant. But for AI, they're maybe a little less relevant because I think everyone is maybe a little more sophisticated about the downsides of tariffs for constructing data centers here in the United States.
Mm-hmm. And ultimately, don't we look at the tariff situation and say, despite the shock and awe of the opening salvo, it's quite a boring position now. It just seems to be reciprocity and reasonable reciprocity at that. Yeah, that's how we would sort of categorize the end game here.
I would say for everyone but China. It is, and we've clearly reached some sort of deal with China. Rare earths for H20s and Mi308Xs. But it's interesting, and one of the trade deals that has been finalized is Vietnam, and there's a special carve out for goods that were transshipped from China through Vietnam. So they are clearly focused on China more than almost any other country, rightly or wrongly. But yeah, and I do think there is, there was maybe 3 months where Trump said he did not care about the stock market, but now he's back to quoting the market at all-time highs.
Yes.
He clearly cares and is clearly very sensitive to market feedback. So I think that will be a dampening mechanism on tariff volatility. But, they passed the bill and he immediately went back to tariffs. And, we'll see where we land in August. But I just think the most important thing in the market by far is AI. It kind of overwhelms everything else.
Absolutely. And I guess the other big story with the market, and we'll get into the H20s, David Sachs will be joining us in a moment, so he'll be jumping in halfway through it. But let's start with maybe this soft launch of the firing of Jerome Powell. On Wednesday morning, Bloomberg reported that Trump was likely to fire Powell soon after talking with Republican lawmakers. Shortly after that, the New York Times reported that Trump had actually drafted Powell's termination letter. Market instantly reacted negatively, dropped 1%. Bond yields rose about 10 basis points. You can see the blips here on these charts starting around 11:30 a.m. when the article was published. Polymarket reported Jerome Powell out as Fed chair in 2025, spiked up to 30% on Wednesday before dropping back down to 20%. Trump quickly squashed these rumors, markets rebounded, and Trump said, we're not planning on doing anything regarding Powell. Some people speculating maybe this was Trump testing the market reaction. As you talked about earlier, Gavin, he does seem to care about the market, as most presidents do. If you remember, Trump nominated Powell as Fed chair November 2nd, 2017, and he has gone on a tirade the last couple of months, calling Powell stupid, numbskull, stubborn, low IQ, a knucklehead, mentally average. It's a long list of descriptors of the person he placed. Powell's term ends May of next year. White House officials have confirmed Trump is in the process of selecting his successor. Polymarket says that could be Kevin Warsh, 22%, Kevin Hassett, 19%, Scott Bessent, 15%. This hasn't actually ever happened, right? We've never had a Fed chair fired. But we have inflation coming back a bit. If you all remember, there's a dual mandate for the Fed, keep unemployment low, check, that's pretty good. And keeping inflation under control, that's been going very well since our massive inflation spike over the past couple of years. And here we go. CPI ticked up 10% from 2.4 to 2.7%, 30 basis point increase over May. So any thoughts, Gavin, on these macro issues around inflation coming back a bit, yet the stock market at an all-time high, and unemployment, if you believe the unemployment data, and we've had a bunch of debates here about that, you know, how correct is it, being at close to an all-time low in our lifetimes? Let's go macro.
Yeah, I wouldn't read too much into the CPI bouncing up a little bit. There's base rate effects, I think, on a month-over-month basis. And if you looked at, you know, what economists call core, super core, different, you know, ways to maybe smooth out CPI, I think inflation is still relatively contained. As far as, but I mean, a lot of very smart people are convinced that tariffs will lead to inflation. We'll see. There's certainly sound theoretical arguments for why they will, but it does look like maybe the overseas exporters are eating a little bit more of the tariffs than people thought that they would, which is good for U.S. inflation. But, you know, the combination of a very weak dollar and tariffs theoretically should lead to a little more inflation. Firing Powell, I worry that the market only went down 1%. I do think the market would go down quite a bit more if Trump did fire Powell. I think it would be a mistake. I hope he doesn't do it. And, you know, there are very sound reasons for the Federal Reserve to be independent. And I hope he does not read from that trial balloon down 1% that that's all that would happen. Look, the world would continue spinning, America would go on, but it would be a mistake.
Freeberg, we have this idea that there would be a couple of rate cuts and maybe we get monetary velocity going again. People will be able to take more loans out, invest more in business. But with the stock market tearing it up, there's a lot of wealth being put into the system with the big, beautiful bill. There's a lot of spending in there, as we've talked about here. Putting that aside, it feels like the economy is in really great shape. Chances of a rate cut has now flipped. No change is now the favorite option for September, whereas a week ago, the favorite option was 25 bips. So this idea that we're going to cut, or the Fed's going to cut, that seems to be changing as well. So your thoughts on the macro picture here?
So I'm not sure, like, the firing of Jerome Powell necessarily solves the U.S. fiscal challenge, which is rising interest rates on the long end of the Treasury curve. So if you look at the 30-year Treasury yield over time, and Nick, maybe you could pull this up while I'm talking, but as of today, we're at exactly 5% on the 30-year. And you can see that this 5% yield, which is what the market is demanding the United States government pay in order to be loaned the money to make the bill payments that the US government has to make every year, is the highest it's been. The borrowing cost is the highest it's been since going all the way back to 2007 as of today. And I think this is the real story for the United States. We have $36 trillion of debt. The average interest rate we're paying on that debt today is 3.3%. That's the average of all the treasuries that the federal government has issued, the Treasury Department has issued, to borrow the money that it is using and has used to pay all its bills. And if you look at the 5% number, that's a 1.7% hike. At 3.3%, which is the current average rate we're paying across $36 trillion, we have a run rate interest expense. So just the money we're paying each year on the interest of the outstanding debt is $1.2 trillion a year. And if this spikes up to 5% from 3.3, we're talking about nearly $2 trillion a year in interest expense. And that number is only going to get bigger as we borrow more money each year and the loan balance goes up, the outstanding debt goes up, because we are still running a deficit. The government is spending more than it's making every year. So the crisis that America faces is a more profound fiscal crisis where the rates that we're having to pay are a function of what the market is telling us. The market does not want to loan the United States money over a 30-year period for less than 5% as of today. And so making adjustments to the short end of the Treasury curve, making overnight loans cheaper, which is what the Fed can do, will stimulate the economy and make more money flow easily, because now you'll be able to borrow money overnight to do stuff like build a building and then sell the building next week or next month, or take out a car loan and pay it down and use your car to go drive for Uber and grow the economy and other things. So the theory is that if we can, drive rates down on the short end of the curve, we'll grow the economy such that we'll be able to make those payments on the long end of the curve. But there comes a point where, again, you're only going to be able to move the market so much until the more important fiscal situations are going to be addressed, which is spending, taxation, and some of the other key policy issues. So I think what the market is saying is it's not as much about Jerome Powell and, frankly, getting rid of a prudent individual, maybe more challenging than it is beneficial, when the real challenges facing the United States need to be more heartily addressed. So I think that's my kind of take on this whole point.
Go ahead, Gavin, build on it.
So point number one, the 30-year has gone up since Powell started cutting rates. So that is just empirical proof that what David is saying, I think, is right. And second, the deficit has been a feature of American politics dating back to Ross Perot's, 1992 presidential run.
His independent third party run.
His independent third party run.
Here we go.
But yes, but the deficit never really mattered because interest rates kept going down, such that even as our debt grew, interest expense has kind of a percentage of the government's budget stayed relatively low. Now that rates have gone up and don't seem like they're, going down anytime soon, the deficit does matter, and it really matters. And you can kind of run a couple of scenarios, but pick your metric. If the deficit kind of continues at current levels and we were to refinance the debt at the prices that David was talking about, it's only a few years before spending on interest is significantly larger than spending on Medicare and Medicaid or Social Security or the military. So pick something you care about, but at current course and speed, it's in the not too distant future where interest expense is the biggest line item for the government, and that is not healthy. And that's why the deficit finally matters. It's just that rates are higher. But the great thing is there is a virtuous cycle here. As you close the deficit, rates should theoretically come down. And then those both feed on each other to kind of help the problem. And it is possible, there's no silver bullet here, but some combination of slowing government spending, extra revenue, and tariffs are effectively, we've never had a consumption tax here in America, which I think is a good thing because consumption taxes are very regressive. But the reality is, like, even when Obama controlled the House, the Senate, and was the most popular Democratic president of our lifetime, I don't think federal government tax receipts as a percentage of GDP got above 18-19%. So that's kind of the ceiling. And for income taxes alone. And tariffs are really just a consumption tax that kind of incents domestic manufacturing. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons they're bad ideas. David Ricardo, the theory of comparative advantage, 100% correct. Free trade is a good thing. But introducing some sort of a consumption tax, growing the economy a little bit faster through deregulation, and slowing government spending, I think there is a way out of this for America.
Yeah.
But it's important to find the way because the deficit finally does matter after really never mattering in my political lifetime.
It is interesting. We've never had to worry about our debt. It was always manageable because it wasn't that large. And even when it got large, it wasn't compared to GDP because the country was doing so well. We had the PC revolution. We had the internet boom. I mean, we've had boom after boom after boom in efficiency that we've led the world. And these companies like Google or Apple take over the world, and all those tax receipts and income comes into our country. That does sort of make you not look at it. I guess I've been talking to you, Gavin, and not to make this super political, but both parties have proven that they have no interest historically and in the current one with cutting spending. It's just the nature of it. So we can sit here, whether you're a Biden fan, Trump fan, put it all aside. Both parties love spending and they're not stopping. One of our friends has proposed, hey, maybe in the midterms we have a couple of these House positions, a couple of senators, maybe we try to flip them and create a new party that cares about this issue. What are your thoughts broadly on that? If a couple of more Joe Manchin types were in the House, the Senate, could this country maybe start to make this the deciding issue? And maybe could we see some movement on the other two parties, some pressure on them by a third party, an America party, perhaps?
Yeah, well, I think a few things. I do think there is room for a much more centrist party in America. The way the primaries work, it, leads to more maybe extreme candidates than anyone would actually want, being each party's candidate. So I think a third party would be helpful, I think there's plenty of room for a party that is, kind of, fiscally conservative, reasonably socially liberal, pro-American energy production, all kinds of energy production, including solar, importantly. So I think there's room for that, and I think it is right that if you just target a few races, you can have a big impact. But I would just say, humbly, I think the American Party is a great idea. I just don't know that it is the highest and best use of Elon's talents at this moment in time with what's happening with AI. And just, to the extent Elon is a friend of the pod, I just think staying focused, AI, Mars, that might be the highest and best use of his particular talents.
100%.
Hasn't that been the case for some time, Gavin? And anytime there's something, whether it's Neuralink, Boring Company, or some other new project, that there's these claims that this is a distraction away from the highest priority work that should be done. I mean, is the political stuff unique? And then his point of view on the political stuff, just like it was with Twitter, is that it's existential to society and civilization and our ability to function and to do, to achieve the progress that he aims to achieve in his core function.
So obviously he is succeeding being the CEO of many different companies. But, I think a big part of what makes him kind of exceptional as a CEO is the perfectionism, the drive. And, politics is not a game of perfection. It's a game of compromise. So I am sure if he sets his mind to the America Party that he will succeed. But I think there are other things for him to focus on. And, the Boring Company, Neuralink, these are games of perfection. These are, this is about engineering. This is about solving a problem. It's not, compromise in the art of the possible. So I think he would succeed. I just think that there are other things that may be a higher calling for him.
Yeah, I mean, and the cost of being away from his businesses this last time around, as he said very publicly, was severe. It was intense, and he's had to really regroup. But we got this incredible news when Grok 4 came out, and I think we should maybe talk a little bit here about what that big prize is. The big prize, I think, is it's actually going to be an open question, Freeberg. I think the big prize is whoever wins general intelligence, super intelligence, or the biggest cluster, or the most power to power the biggest cluster that powers general super intelligence. So where do we sit on the language models today, Gavin, and Elon's recent, let's just call it what it is, I mean, incredibly dominant release of Grok 4. I don't think people expected that. They didn't expect him to be able to leapfrog everybody. And let's be honest, people are leapfrogging each other every 4 to 6 months. So I fully expect Gemini will leapfrog Grok, and OpenAI will have their time in the sun again as well. But this was pretty impressive, right?
I'd say this is the biggest leapfrog we've seen in quite some time. And I think the benchmarks that matter are RKGI2 and Humanity's Last Exam, where it did, in the case of RKGI2, it's called semi-private, which is important because it means that some of the questions were held back, because the criticism of these models is they memorize the answer. And so RKGI2, it has not seen the questions before, and it did roughly twice as good as, the state-of-the-art Google, OpenAI, and Anthropic models. And then on Humanity's Last Exam, we can call it 50 to 75% better. An exceptional humans score 5% on that. It scores in the 40s. So this is incredible progress, and I think it's worth mentioning this model was trained on Hopper. So this model is probably about as far as you can take the last generation of NVIDIA GPUs. The next models we see, Grok 5, O5 from OpenAI, whatever they're going to call the next Gemini, they will be trained on Blackwell, and I think that will be a really big step function. But I do think the ultimate prize here is artificial superintelligence. Like, I think artificial general intelligence will create a lot of economic value, but, maybe we will be able to work less as humans. But I think ASI, artificial superintelligence, is what is really exciting in terms of maybe, being able to live longer, really kind of fundamentally kind of change the fabric of our lives.
Can you take a stab at explaining that difference in definition to the audience who they hear these terms and we kind of bundle them into either a transcendent intelligence that we haven't seen before, that we as humans can't comprehend, it goes beyond human intelligence, or this is the smartest human on the planet, and where we are right now in this journey? Because I think these terms are all getting muddled together, and I think we have an interesting conversation here if we parse them.
I think artificial general intelligence, I would define it as an AI that can take economically useful actions in a variety of domains and be better than the average human in most domains, all domains. But that's very different than superintelligence. Okay. Being able to draft a contract, that's not superintelligence, but it is useful. Being able to do a medical diagnosis, not superintelligence, but it is useful. Being able to book my travel, so on and so forth. Superintelligence means exactly what you said, that it is smarter than any human, but it has, access to all of human knowledge. And I think one of the most interesting questions is, what will the economic returns to superintelligence be? And they're definitionally unknowable because we have never seen superintelligence before. If as humans, we have kind of pushed the limits of physics, biology, chemistry, the laws of the universe, then maybe the economic returns to superintelligence won't be that high. But if superintelligence is curing cancer and inventing warp drives, then the returns are going to be really, really high, and it's fundamentally unknowable. Yeah.
Okay, so we're at general intelligence. Hey, your lawyer, your tax, your accountant's going to go much faster. They'll have a co-pilot. This is all going to be great for a business. Every business gets 10% more efficient a month. Seems like a reasonable bogey, which means every 7, 8, 9 months, every business is going to get twice as efficient at these kind of chores. Yeah?
I think that, I wouldn't say that's a reasonable bogey. I think that might be a little aggressive. It's, the world always, it's, I think it's a Bill Gates quote, world always changes less than you expect over the next 1, 2, 3 years, but way more than you expect over 10 years.
Yes.
Just takes time for technologies to diffuse. Maybe really nimble startups will see some of the gains that you were talking about. But I mean, if we doubled productivity, I mean, that would be like an economic revolution.
I mean, we're seeing it in programming.
For
if
sure.
you talk to the average developer, they, I think, would say they're getting 5 to 10% better a month. Better being defined as faster shipping more code. Rule of 72. Hey, every year at least you're gonna be twice as good. I think that actually seems to be happening with developers.
I think it is happening with software. I think software is the first area where you've seen a real, true kind of economic productivity impact. Generalized, a lot of companies are having incredible success with AI for customers, support, for sales. I think you see it more in startups than big companies, but the impact it has had on coding is undeniable.
Freeberg, let me swing this around to you. We've got the super intelligence out there. We've got AGI out there. One of the things Gavin said was, by definition, you can't quantify gains of super intelligence. That is the big prize here. That's why people are putting this much money into these kind of data centers. Yeah, in your mind, it's not just the general intelligence. That would be the silver medal. People are going for the gold here, not general intelligence, super intelligence. Breakthroughs that we can't imagine. Would you say that's a fair way to sum up the massive interest in investing in these projects?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something where everyone has identified this asymptotic return moment where if you get to that moment, you're limitless in terms of the upside. Is there one winner? I don't think so. But I would also kind of reframe this as being some binary condition that I think we're talking about it as being, quote, general intelligence, super intelligence, as being on a spectrum of leverage towards complexity. Complexity meaning, like, I can do a simple task, like instead of writing a letter and putting it in an envelope and having some guy carry it to my mom, and she gets it the next day, I can digitally get her that message instantly over email. That creates an incredible amount of leverage and solves a lot of the complexity of getting her that communication from me. So if I, as a human, said, I would like to harness fusion power, similar to what the sun uses to make energy, and I want to do that on Earth. Today we're in, call it year 40 or 50 of a research cycle of humans trying to solve that particularly complex problem. It's a scientific problem, it's a discovery problem, it's an engineering problem. And this idea of superintelligence is that it could give us immense leverage in solving that complex problem that we otherwise may be challenged to solve over decades or hundreds of years. Or think about one day solving a problem that would take humans thousands of years to solve. I don't think that humans are limited in our ability to solve problems. I think we're limited in terms of time, and what digital intelligence gives us is leverage on time, so that we can now tackle ever more complex tasks that, as you think about these tasks, the amount of time isn't just an incremental 1 year or 2 years, but it becomes 100 years, maybe 1,000 years. So this relates to, I think, projects around physics, around chemistry, around transportation, around biology, where we're probably fundamentally scratching the surface today, and where the superintelligence is an enormous leverage creator for us. And so I don't view it as some like species or race that independently persists in its own intentions, but it is a tool that provides leverage in a way that is orders of magnitude greater than the leverage we got from yesteryear's digital tools and probably today's AI tools and probably tomorrow's general intelligence tools, is kind of how I would think about it. And maybe it's because one model does so much stuff better than any human, you can call it super intelligence, but I think functionally leverage into complexity is where this becomes super compelling for humans. And it's why I think we can and should be highly optimistic about living very long lives and traveling anywhere we want and having abundance in food,
yes,
and having abundance in resources, and having abundance in recouping our time to do the things we want to do instead of the things that we have to do today, because we don't have access to this incredible leverage. So
Gavin,
that's where I get kind of
I love it,
compelled.
Friedberg. I think it's a great way to look at it. But I want to go back to the silver medal here in this sort of competition. Gold being super intelligence, we start solving fusion and really big problems on deep research cycles, and the velocity of that goes up. But just going back to the silver, everybody in the economy becomes, I don't know, single digit, it's more efficient every month, and some amount every year. I've been trying to back of the envelope what I think the value is for a human being in the West, in the modern world, and what they should spend on AI per month. I've come up with a number of about $75, $150, somewhere in that range, is a no-brainer to spend on your AI per month as an individual working in the world. If that's the premise, right, I think there's 1 billion people in the developed world who could spend, let's call it $100 a month, it's $1,200 a year. It doesn't take a genius to figure out this is $1 trillion in revenue. Based on market cap, it's probably $10 trillion in market cap. And then we just have to back into the spending of what it costs to build this. You're doing these kind of calculations, I'm sure, at Atreides, yeah? And where this general back of the envelope that I've come up with in my mind for a mental model, that there's a $10 trillion prize, $1 trillion in revenue, just in the silver medal, does that jive with the spending we're seeing today? I think people are putting in $10 billion worth of equipment a year across 5 different companies, right?
I think they're putting in quite a bit more than 10 billion per year.
Each.
No.
Google alone is doing 70 billion this year. Each is putting 70.
But is that 70 billion they're putting in this year going to be repeated for the next 5 years? So it'd be 350 billion?
If you look at
TBD?
TBD, the future's always uncertain.
Yeah.
But if there are economic returns to that, they will keep doing it for sure. Something interesting is AI is, as we've discussed in previous all-ins, extremely compute intensive. And it's just at no point in my career as a tech investor, except the very beginning, which was kind of the end of the PC wars, which Dell won by being a low-cost producer, going direct, cutting out the working capital, the components in a PC depreciate. So if you have to go through a store where it sits on the shelves, you're at a big disadvantage from, either call it a cost or a quality perspective. But at no point in the 25 years I've been a tech investor has being the low-cost producer mattered. Being the low-cost producer is really going to matter in AI because at some level, the amount of tokens you produce is intelligence because of test time compute, post-training reinforcement learning. And so if you can produce those tokens at a lower cost, you'll have a big advantage. If for that 75 billion or 30 billion or 50 billion you're spending per year in CapEx, you can produce more tokens, that is a profound advantage. I don't like your calculations just as a back of the envelope, kind of scratch. They seem reasonable to me.
The $1 trillion a year in revenue because of AI seems quite reasonable when you frame it as $1,000 for a person to be whatever, 30, 40, 50% more efficient at work every year.
Yeah, and it's just, we could probably go back and look at kind of like the early days of, cell phones and what were people willing to pay relative to disposable income.
Your PC analogy would actually be the perfect one. A PC back in that era was what, $3,000, $4,000 per person. They lasted for 3 years, so it was exactly $1,000 a year.
But this is why creating such delineated distinction between different types of AI, I think, is also like the equivalent of trying to create distinctions between other types of technology. So the automobile, the airplane, the telephone, the computer, all of these technologies are tools that created leverage on things that were otherwise complexity and reduce them down to simplicity from a human perspective. Pick up the phone, make a call, instead of getting up on your horse and going across the country to deliver a message, or using a computer to do a spreadsheet that calculated everything for you rather than calculate it by hand, and so on and so forth. Like, all of these tools reduce complexity to simple tasks for humans, and the ever-increasing complexity of what we can accomplish with digital tools is, continuing in this kind of era now. But that's why I think it's very similar, Jason. Like, this is not some new concept. It's the continuation of human productivity. It's the continuation of the improvement of what humans can do and what we can produce, what we can. And yes, there's a concept now that intelligence has become such a, like it's caught up to everything. And Gavin, I don't know if you think that there is this concept of some moment of singularity, but it does feel to me like there's just extraordinary leverage that's being created that feels similar to, yeah.
For sure that's true. I hope that's true. I hope your vision of it being a productivity enhancer for humans is correct. I do think, people deep in AI do think there's some probability that it goes sideways. But I hope that you're right. But coming back to JCal's, $10 trillion prize and, relative to, the market caps of the companies involved, it needs to be at least $10 trillion. Something that I think is interesting and relevant, particularly to Grok 4 being the best product, is the best product doesn't always win in technology.
No, Betamax,
yeah, in sports, they say defense wins championships, and on the internet, distribution wins championships, and Grok 4 has formidable competitors with lots of distribution.
If you're looking to get a credit card that helps you earn points to travel this summer, I would think about two things. First,
Any given time, people are here.
Yeah.
Distribution wins championships, and Grok 4 has formidable competitors with lots of distribution, and Google and Meta, if they get their act together, Microsoft. And so from an industrial logic perspective, something that I think makes a lot of sense, particularly since OpenAI bought Johnny Ive's hardware startup, which will place them into competition with Apple at some point, is xAI and Apple are natural partners. There's been a lot of news about Apple thinking about buying Perplexity or Mistral, but that's just a Band-Aid. Those companies don't get Apple what they need, and Apple's had an incredible partnership for many years now with Google that's generating tens of billions of dollars for both companies. And I think there is solid industrial logic for a partnership. You could have Apple Grok, Safe Grok, whatever you want to call it, so that Apple feels comfortable. And that probably also helps Grok in the enterprise. And then it also helps both Apple and Google with this DOJ trial. And so I think in this, incredibly high elo chess match that is being played between the leading labs, that partnership makes a lot of sense for both companies.
It's the first time I've heard anybody sort of make that natural connection, but you're right. Eric Schmidt and Steve Jobs at one point had this discussion, which was, hey, we've got search and you've got a browser now, because the iPhone didn't have a browser, they could have built their own search engine, they could have partnered with Yahoo, but they decided to make this long-term partnership with Google, and then that dropped, 20-30 billion to the bottom line in Apple and cemented Google's search franchise.
Absolutely, and right now that deal is being litigated by the DOJ, and the DOJ is considering remedies. And so if you bring on a really kind of effective, credible AI provider, I think it could help both Google and Apple with their antitrust issues. And at the end of the day, Google, they have Android and their Pixel phones. OpenAI is making hardware. Anthropic is kind of a captive of Amazon. Meta is kind of a, they're in a death match with Apple. So I think there is really sound logic for that partnership. I think it would be good for both companies. Love to see it happen.
It feels to me like the interface is going to be the browser. I know this sounds crazy, but I've been playing with the Comet browser for Perplexity. Did you play with it yet, Gavin, or look at some of the demos?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts here? Because it's really, and then ChatGPT just launched a virtual desktop that pops up to go do your, little web-based scrapes, agents, assignments, whatever. I'm going to call it assignments, homework, chores. Go do your chores. What are your thoughts on this modality?
Yeah, the browser is part of distribution winning championships. Apple has Safari, Google has Chrome, and if you're not going to strike a partnership with one of those distribution channels, you will eventually need to do your own browser, and you can extend that logic, all the way. That's why they did a browser, they did a phone. But I also do think the companions from Grok have been interesting to play with, and they certainly make it more engaging.
That becomes the agent. It's a kind of incredible, mind-blowing concept for that to be the interface. All right, listen, here we go. Calling in live. Got a breaking bestie coming on board here. David Sachs calling in live. I see the pale yellow paint and an ancient building. You must be in some sort of wing of the Great White House. Is that correct, David?
I am. Well, I'm actually not in the White House per se. I guess I'm on the White House grounds. We're in the Eisenhower Executive Office building. That's where my office.
Yes, I can tell from that building.
I've been here.
Yeah, no, they said great things. And I checked my calendar.
I'll send you some photos. It's great.
Well, no, but the calendar's wide open between now and All In Summit, allin.com/yada, yada, yada. So the window's there, Sachs. The window's wide open. And I'll see you in the cafeteria, I guess.
Play your cards right on stage next week, Jake. You might get invited after the AI Summit we're doing.
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
We got the AI event in DC next Wednesday, which has been publicly announced, so it's going to be exciting.
David, you brought a friend today. Maybe introduce your friend and tell us what you got done. What have you gotten done in the last week for the American people? They want to know. Because you weren't here last week doing the pod, so you must have gotten something done for the American people. Let's hear it.
Well, first of all, this is the czar behind the czar, Bo Hines. Okay. He's the executive director of the President's Working Group on Digital Assets. So that's the working group that I chair, but he actually does all the work. He's the executive director, and he's here every day. And he's been working on crypto pretty much nonstop since we started the administration. And he's kind of the unsung hero within our operation here on these two bills that just passed the House, which are historic and quite momentous.
So, Bo, welcome to the program. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about these bills and what they do for the American people.
Yeah, well, first of all, David, you're too kind. We've had a blast working together. I mean, we connected back in transition, I think, in late November, and we started mapping out a plan for this. And to see it come to fruition this week is really it's unbelievable. The fact that we had the bipartisan votes we did today in the House is remarkable. It's unprecedented, and it shows you that the leaders on both sides of the aisle understand that our country has to be at the forefront of this technological development. But let's start with Genius, because I think Genius is really the foundation for everything else we can build upon in this space. A lot of industry cares about market structure, as do we, and we want to see it done on the president's desk as well. But Genius is unique because it really updates the payment rails inside of our current financial system. I mean, the payment rails have been archaic, and I've likened it to the fact that the ways in which we've communicated have changed quite dramatically over the course of the last several decades. The ways in which we move money really haven't. And we have the technology there in blockchain technology. So what we're doing here is we're fixing the plumbing of our financial system. We're securing U.S. dollar dominance for decades to come. If you want to access our capital markets, you're going to have to use a dollar-backed stable. You're also providing a pathway for tokenization of public securities and 24/7 markets and the things that people have dreamed about for quite some time. This is a revolutionary piece of legislation, and the fact that it had this much bipartisan support is incredible. It's a testament to President Trump's leadership. It's a testament to our fantastic AI and crypto czar, David's leadership. I mean, he's truly been the guiding star behind the ideology and what we're pushing here. And, he has a phenomenal team as well. I mean, I'd be remiss not to thank Tracy, who's David's chief of staff. I mean, in the midst of all the chaos to get this done, and there were so many steps to this, we had to beat the banking lobby to get it past the Senate. Then it moved over to the House, in which we had to basically fight some members that really misinterpreted or misunderstood what this bill actually did. And the president stepped up, David stepped up in an enormous way. It wouldn't have happened without either of them. And so now we have this bill heading to his desk tomorrow. And to pivot to market structure really briefly, this provides the rules of the road for the exchanges, the brokers, everyone in the space. They desperately need it so that we can break down the wall between traditional financial institutions and these digital asset players. I think that's well underway. Obviously, getting a vote as strong as they did in the House is indicative of what can happen in the Senate. If we deliver on these two pieces of legislation, I mean, that's about 90% of what needs to be done for crypto to make the U.S. crypto a capital of the world. And it's just remarkable. I mean, we're over the moon.
Okay, Sachs, You got these two things over the finish line. Congratulations on that. Lots of compromises you had to make. So I want to get into what were the compromises to get this done.
Just to clarify one thing when you say finish line. So like Bo was saying, there's two bills. There's the Genius Act, which is the stablecoin legislation. And then there's the Clarity Act, which is market structures, basically all the other tokens besides stablecoins. Where we are is that both passed the House today, but Genius has already passed the Senate. So it is going to the president's desk tomorrow, and it will become law. We're doing a bill signing with the president. By the time this pod is released, it will probably be law. I think we will have the signing. Clarity started in the House, and so it has passed the House, and now it's going to the Senate. And they still have to do their hearings and markup on it. And we expect that'll happen over the next couple of months. In fact, the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, Tim Scott, has said that he wants to finish with the market structure legislation by the end of September. So if all goes well, then we could be looking at a second bill signing in, say, October. And like Bo said, that would be pretty much the crypto industry's wish list for having a clear legal framework in the United States for both stablecoins and other crypto tokens. So it's really pretty amazing. I mean, when I started this job, I'll just tell you, one of my friends in Silicon Valley said that, you know, you may be able to get some AI things done, but you'll never get anything done on crypto. And the reason is because the entrenched interests are too powerful, and they'll stop it. The banking lobby will stop it, or Elizabeth Warren will stop it, or just all the status quo players who could get disrupted by blockchain-based technology will somehow find a way to stop it. And that didn't happen. Like, we've actually now moved forward. Genius is about to become law, and I think Clarity is looking like it's going to have the votes in the Senate as well to become law. So it's really pretty amazing how much progress we've made in just 6 months. And like both said, this really comes down to President Trump's leadership. He made the promises during the campaign to prioritize crypto, to make the United States the crypto capital of the planet. And it was his negotiating skills and deal making that made this all happen. I mean, this past week has been a little bit of a roller coaster. There were reports over the last couple of days that the whole thing was falling apart. And when it happened, there was a moment, I think this has been publicly reported, but give you some color on it, is there were 12 members of the House whose votes were necessary to advance the bill to this vote today. And at a certain point, President Trump brought him into his office, the Oval Office, and worked out all the differences personally. And that's what put this bill over the top. If it wasn't for the president's direct involvement and action and understanding of the issues, he listened to all the concerns and he paid attention to the ones that were real and then rebutted the ones that weren't. If it wasn't for his direct involvement, we would not be here today.
And he understands crypto. He's involved in it. Seems to have an understanding of the value of stablecoins for the US dollar. That seems to be a key motivator for this being bipartisan. You got twice as many Democrats as you thought you would get. Is that because people want to make sure that dollar supremacy gets locked in stablecoins as a way to do that? Because you can't have a stablecoin unless it's backed by a dollar.
Yeah, I mean, like I've talked about on this show before, it shouldn't be that hard to sell regulation to Democrats. I mean, what we're doing here is providing a regulatory framework for the industry. They didn't have one before, and that's why the number one stablecoin player in the world right now is an offshore entity. They will have to come onshore as part of this bill in the next 3 years. So what we're doing here is creating a regulatory framework. But the reason why it's substantially bipartisan is because the industry wants this regulation because they want the stability it gives them in terms of having that legal authorization. They want to make sure that if, 4 years, 8 years from now, 12 years from now, whatever, there's not some new Gary Gensler who comes in and turns the whole industry upside down because he doesn't like some aspect of what they're doing and he just starts prosecuting them, which is what the industry experienced over the past 4 years with Biden's war on crypto. So we, meaning the Trump administration, could fix the Gensler issues just with agency rulemaking, and we're certainly on that path to do that. But if you want long-term stability that goes beyond just this administration, you have to get legislation, you have to canonize it into law. And that's why the industry was so interested in getting these bills passed. So I think that's why you're seeing some bipartisanship here. Like Bo said, I do think that there's a substantial number of Democrats who understand that this technology is the future, and it's a positive thing for the U.S. What could be bad about allowing digital dollars, which extends the dollar's dominance online, so that it basically bolsters the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency. Over time, as we get challengers from BRICS, for example, this is going to make the US dollar stronger. And every time a dollar token trades somewhere in the world in a crypto wallet, there has to be a physical dollar in a US bank account invested in a US treasury. And that creates demand for our debt, which is another positive thing. And there have been studies done that show that the results of this bill could be trillions of dollars of new demand for our debt, which is only a positive thing.
And if you don't allow a legal way to do this, and you don't have a proper framework, you've been dancing around this person who has 3 years to get their act together. That's Tether. I'll say it. You can do a search for Tether controversies or shenanigans, and you'll find plenty of them.
I don't think it's fair to say they don't have their act together. I think they have their act together. It's just that they did not know how they'd be treated operating onshore in the U.S. under Gary Gensler and the Biden administration. And so they operated offshore. And what was happening under the last administration is that the last administration, by creating all this uncertainty and doubt, was driving all the innovation offshore.
Okay, fine. They have a sordid past. That's my statement, not yours. But now they have to clean up whatever messy stuff they have in their past. That's me saying it, not you. You can have your opinion. I'll take mine. But we're in agreement that if you don't have a framework, they would be doing even more things that were maybe off the reservation in my mind. Gavin, any thoughts here on crypto? I'm not sure you've participated in it particularly because it didn't have a framework, yes?
I would just say, one, David, congratulations. Seems like an incredible achievement. Two, I try to invest in areas where I feel like I at least believe I have some sort of competitive advantage. And it's not clear to me that I have any sort of competitive advantage in crypto. But three, David, I am curious, for the stable coins, does the Genius Act limit them to dollar-backed stable coins? So it's not like you can create the stable coin and then swap in something other than a dollar. Is that true?
Well, I mean, anybody can create a stable coin that's backed by anything. And in fact, I think there are like euro-backed stable coins out there, for example, but nobody uses them. I think if you look at the stable coin market share, it's like 98% US dollars, 2% euros, because there's a flight to quality. I mean, everyone wants to use the best one, right? And this is why it's in the interest of the United States to basically enable this technology to continue flourishing, is because as the best fiat currency, we're the one that's going to get used the most. There's no reason to have multiple fiat stablecoins, not really. So this is going to accrue to the benefit of the United States. Jake, let me go back to something you said. So I don't necessarily agree with your criticisms of that particular company, but where I will agree is that this bill will provide additional comfort for consumers and additional protection for consumers, because now all the stablecoin companies will have to operate in the United States. They'll be subjected to quarterly audits, and we will know that every stablecoin that's been issued is fully reserved or backed up by a dollar in a US bank account. And so therefore, when a stablecoin holder eventually wants to cash out and they go to basically an off-ramp, the money will actually be there. Now, I'm not saying that the money isn't there with any of the current providers. In fact, I think it is, but now consumers will have the additional protection and confidence to know that all these entities have been audited, they've passed these audits, and they're regulated entities under US law. And that creates confidence for the market, and it's good for everybody, and it will spread the adoption of this stablecoin product.
And if they don't, they can't participate in our market, right? So that's the good news here is, if you choose to not go through those audits and you do attestations or other fugazi stuff offshore, you're not saying everybody's doing that, but people have, then you just don't get to participate. And this is the great thing about having some basic rules of the road. We should talk a little bit here about infrastructure sacks. You were in Pittsburgh this week. There were some announcements. This was another bipartisan win. I think Shapiro was there, a bunch of investment going on there. Maybe tell us a little bit about the progress made in Pittsburgh with regards to AI and infrastructure.
This was an energy and innovation summit that was organized by the Pennsylvania Senator Hank McCormick and his wife, Dina Powell McCormick. And they did an amazing job bringing together all of these different companies and interests that have a stake in energy in Pennsylvania and the development of AI. And Pennsylvania is, I think it's the number 2 energy producing state in the U.S. It has tremendous amounts of natural gas. They feel like they can expand that. I think there's been a lot of fracking in the past there. For example, they even have nuclear Westinghouses there. And it makes sense to have the data centers near the power source, right? And so we know that these big AI data centers can be powered by either natural gas or nuclear. And so Pennsylvania just makes a lot of sense as a place to build this AI infrastructure. So this was a summit to announce new investment in Pennsylvania, something like $90 billion. President Trump was there to keynote the summit and talk about these investments. It's his policies towards energy that he started describing long ago. I mean, remember, he made the campaign promise of drill, baby, drill. He's been talking about the need for energy expansion in America for many years. And I think he was very far-sighted in seeing that energy is the basis for everything. It's the basis for AI. It's the basis for all other kinds of growth. So by promoting energy dominance, we also get AI dominance. So we've talked on this show before about how we're going to need that energy to power the electricity of all these new AI data centers. So this summit brought together all these different groups. And the thing I thought was really interesting, the thing I learned from it, was just how diverse the business interests are that are going to participate in this whole AI boom. It wasn't just big tech. Yes, Ruth Porat from Google was there. It's also small tech. There was hardware companies, there were robotics companies, but there were also these energy companies. There was nuclear, there was gas. The trade associations were there. It's construction, it's electricians, it's carpenters. And so there was a huge diverse array of different parts of the economy that are going to experience growth from this AI boom that's taking place. It's not just a Silicon Valley thing. So that was what I took away from Pittsburgh, and it was a really cool experience being
I
there.
thought there were 2 interesting notes as well. Hydro, I saw Google was investing in hydro and upgrading some dams there. This is, I think, Gavin, one of the great upshots of the AI boom is that the AI companies, whether it's Meta or Google, they're so motivated that they'll actually go and upgrade the infrastructure. They'll invest in the small modular nuclear reactors that are coming, and even gas turbines. Obviously, natural gas is a major part of this as well. And you saw that up close and personal with the build out of Colossus. Yeah, Gavin?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, electrical production is fundamental to AI. If we do not significantly increase kind of domestic energy production and electricity generation, we are already at a disadvantage to China. And I do think we want to close that kind of electrical generation gap as quickly as we can. And natural gas is great, nuclear is great, solar's great, batteries are great. We need it all.
Yeah.
All of it.
And Sachs, I saw your favorite governor, Josh Shapiro, was there, and he was being very positive about finding common ground on energy, economic development, and saying, hey, this is like a great example of bipartisan efforts to collaborate. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because you had 2 great moments of collaboration between the Trump administration and the Democrats. This is good for the American people, yeah? Both on the crypto project and on AI in Pennsylvania.
I've never met Shapiro. I did see him there at the event, but I didn't see him on the stage. I don't know if he was part of the round table, so I don't know exactly what his status was. But what's interesting about Pennsylvania right now is that it's a state that's turning red. And so you see that Fetterman, who's probably the most right-wing member of the Democrat Party in the Senate, and Josh Shapiro obviously is tacking towards the center because they see the direction of travel in Pennsylvania. So yeah, I think you've got some centrist Democrats in that state.
Yeah, working out pretty well.
Josh Shapiro every 2 days tweets something about how he's deregulated something, he's made it easier to do business. Like he's on the program. Seems like a sensible man.
Yeah, 100%.
I'll just give a final shout out to Bo here for all the work that he did on Genius. I mean, he's kind of the unsung
And
hero.
Bo, how are you doing all this while finishing up your degree? When do you graduate from college? The kid looks like he's 20 years old. How old are you, Bo?
I have the baby face. I'm 29, turning 30 next month.
Look at you, 29 in the White House, leading and working with David Sachs. This is a dream come true for you, huh?
It is. I mean, David's been incredible. I've learned so much from him. Just be a part of it. But I have a 10-month-old now, so I should have bags under my eyes from lack of sleep. But Jason, I'll make one more point before I jump off on the tether topic. Like, the one thing that I think your viewers should know is this year they'll be the 4th largest purchaser of U.S. Treasuries. And I think that's something that, we should really contemplate. I agree with David's sentiment on this. I'm excited to see what they do here in the U.S. I'm glad they're going to be a part of our system under the regulatory regime. But so will everyone else. And I think it's a great thing for our country. It allows us to have control.
That's great that you guys are backing them up because they've been banned so many times by other governments. I'm glad you got their act together. I'm gonna keep on those tether guys until they get their act together. So
Keep qualifying that you speak only for yourself.
I only speak for myself. I've been following that tether story for a long time, and I think it's great.
I want to make this point. I always know that our critics have never actually watched the pod when they start talking about the all-in point of view on something, right? As if there's a singular point of view from the all-in pod. Like, it's like the all-in grows wherever they think something. When anyone who's watched the show knows that we've been fighting like cats and dogs for years, and there's 4 distinct points of view, and sometimes we agree, but there's almost always some disagreement. So
we've disagreed about this issue. We also, Trump and I, as you know, are relentless supporters of Ukraine. We believe we should be giving them weapons and support. And David, you happen to disagree with me and our president on that. You've had a different position historically. So here we are.
I'm going to stay in my lane on that one.
David, can we talk about the H20s, or would you rather not? Because I feel like you have been so dead right about this, and I am, it seems like the export, they're going to get the licenses, and that is 100% the right decision for America. And I do give you credit for championing that. I'm happy to talk about why I think it's great, but would just,
can you frame it for a second for the audience, Gavin? What we're talking about here, NVIDIA obviously was banned from selling their latest and greatest to China, and even the last generation, the H20s. And obviously that creates an opening for Huawei and other players to create competitive products as opposed to using the standards built here in America. Yeah.
Well, I think you said it well, but first of all, it's not the latest and greatest. The H20 is not the latest and greatest. We're not gonna. I don't think we're gonna let the latest.
It's not even the last gen. It's a deprecated version of the last generation.
Right.
Yeah.
So remnants.
It's a less powerful version of the Hopper chip. And now they're on to Blackwell. So it's anyway. The Gavin can explain.
Yeah, it is. It's many years behind. But while it's many years behind the kind of state of the art here in America, it is, I think, kind of devilishly clever because it's called 2 years ahead of kind of the chips from Huawei, and so it kind of gives America an advantage while preventing China from developing kind of a domestic NVIDIA alternative. And the real threat is because China, they do have more electricity. They can do things that we cannot do here in America. The Blackwell racks are exquisitely designed to be as power efficient as possible. If you don't care about power, you can make very different kind of design decisions. Huawei has something called the Cloud Matrix 384, which uses fiber optics instead of copper to link the chips together. And while it's not nearly as power efficient as the Blackwell NVL72, they have all the power they need. And so I think it's a smart decision for America to sell this chip that gives America an advantage in AI and keeps China from developing kind of their own domestic alternatives, which could eventually kind of challenge, NVIDIA, AMD, other kind of American AI accelerator champions globally. We don't want that to happen. So I thought it was a mistake when they banned the chips, and I'm really happy and think it's really good for America if that is being reversed. And kudos to you, David.
Gavin, you said it so well. I don't think I have anything to add.
Can I just say one thing on crypto? You guys can put it in or not, but I thought it was interesting, David. I was always worried about stablecoins as a risk to the dollar, but I think you make a very good point that when you are the dominant currency, they entrench the dominance. And I just had not thought of them that way.
I think what's going to happen with these dollar-based stablecoins is they'll start being used all over the world. Let's say that you're in a country, maybe it's a developing world country, where the fiat currency is not trusted. And now all of a sudden you can transact in dollars using a wallet on a phone, and the merchant also has a wallet on a phone, and now you can just transact in dollars. You could see a large portion of these economies dollarizing from the bottom up. Because again, once you have your choice of fiat currencies through stablecoin, why wouldn't you just use the best one? And that's what I think is really interesting. So I do think it extends the dollar's dominance internationally into the online
100%.
realm.
Yeah, and previously people were basing their stablecoins on a basket of assets, some treasuries, some real estate investments, because they were seeking yield, Gavin. So they would buy real estate or short-term, long-term treasuries. They might put equities into it. They might keep some in cash. And none of that was known. And so that's where this big fear came. Hey, these things are getting pretty big. There's obviously demand to use this concept of a stable coin. But what if there's a run on the stable coins? And that was always the big fear with various players, was what if everybody wants to withdraw their stable coins? Are there enough dollars or liquid assets in them? And that's where I think certain players have maybe, moved the asset allocation. And in order to be in the U.S. market, Tether's going to have to be 100% in treasuries, right? They're not going to be allowed to be, say, in real estate. There was a, concept that maybe they were buying Chinese paper for real estate back in the day, and people were concerned about that. So this cleans all that up, and they have an easy path. But you can't make interest on it. That's actually a very interesting portion of this. So that will have to come at a later time, so the banks don't lose anything here, right?
Well, just to clarify one point on that, one of the concessions that was made to community banks is not to have an interest feature because the community banks were worried that this new stablecoin industry would put them out of business. I think that fear was wildly overblown on their part. I don't think that's what's going to happen remotely. But when you have a new technology like this and a very established industry, you can see why maybe they'd be afraid. But the bill allows for all sorts of marketing, promotions, rebates, that kind of stuff. So maybe it's not called interest, but there are mechanisms to create, let's say, rewards for stablecoin holders. So it's not as like black and white as just, there's like nothing a stablecoin issuer can do to attract or incentivize or reward one of their holders. It is a dimension they could compete on.
So maybe if I were to buy $10,000 worth of a stable coin, I could get mileage-like points or maybe a load-in gift card or something like that.
Yeah, we have to interpret the language, but the mechanism is there.
Okay, well, there you have it, folks. All right, reporting from our capital, David Sachs, our czar of AI and cryptocurrency. I'll see you next Wednesday in D.C. for a very important summit.
Any given time, people are here.
Yeah.
At any given time, people are here. So at all times, you can be bulldozering the mind because
you said something crazy, because I was watching a TikTok that you reposted and I got so emotional with that guy who was actually helping, and he does like charity stuff, and I got emotional. I'm sitting on my bed and what the hell, because again, that could be purely curated. He could be doing that to get views.
Explain to the audience what was happening in the video.
So it's a guy, Zach something, I don't know what his name is, and what he does is that he goes to different people and he helps them out. He does charity things, this is me.
Can I ask you something? Could you hear the lady's voice clearly?
Yeah.
Nah, she was mic'd.
No, but like he was mic'd. He couldn't be mic'd, so he's mic'd.
No. If a professional listens to it, also use distance.
But if the distance is like just a meter, because Usizo said that he heard himself and he's not mic'd and he's like 2 meters away from us.
You'd hear the sound quality, it won't be the same.
Zachary, sorry, let me get
Zachary
but he's relatively close. So I also don't want to act as if he's like far from me. He's like a meter away from me. So with that being said, I found myself so emotional watching the stuff, and I'm like, this is beautiful, and I think the message is beautiful. Guti, just love and be kind to everyone. I think that's a beautiful message. But again, that could be a curated message. That could be a situation where I need to follow him, and then as we've seen on social media, people start turning us into something and start
changing their content,
and then start selling us something.
I mean, look at this thing of white farmers. X now owns the minds of certain news outlets. Even some people, they may know whether this thing's true. They don't know. But the fact that X has said it and Musk has said it.
Ukuthi there's a white genocide.
When you ask Grok, he was exposed 2-3 weeks before.
Well, he exposed himself.
Yeah.
It exposed
Yeah,
himself.
yeah. Before the president.
Technical glitch.
You ask him a stupid question, he speaks about white genocide. So that's that's the power you're speaking about, owning the mind. The platform X, whatever any other platform, is just there so that it can control your mind, so that you become this thing. I know. Yeah.
I was at the gym and I walked into the sauna and it was like Amachita, Klamba City, Ondaki by 5. And then Makfika could have been by 2. Yeah, when swing again into the sauna, you know, and I sit down and I chill.
Sauna la o Didi noma
La Didi la ne baby.
I think this one, I can't explain it. I've never been in a sauna. What happened?
fucking up your story.
Kona sauna, kona steam room. Steam room is steam. Sauna is heat. Kona malahle bese I'm a puna. I'm a puna.
Serious.
I'm a puna.
So forget it,
Proper point.
Okay.
Mina futhi ngifake i-brief bese ngithi thawula phezulu.
Thank God. What's happening?
Yeah, double barrel.
What's happening?
Because it's a public space, bro.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a public space. I need to be decent. Well, again, based on the space. Ngiyangena lapha ngiyahlala lapha futhi ngiyabuka ngithi hey, that white genocide. So haha, everybody laughed.
You said that?
Yeah, I just said
When
that.
the 2 white guys came in.
No,
They were already there.
They were already there. They were already there.
Oh, there's 5 black guys.
There's 5 black guys.
There's 2 white guys.
Yeah, 5 or whatever, but there's more black guys. And I say, yo, that white genocide.